been gone a long time, but he was a common sense old guy. And I know if he had been here this morning and saw step up with a standing ovation before I speak, he would say, "Son, if you ever start off with a standing ovation, then you should shut up and sit down right away." You can only go downhill after that. There's no upward trend. So thank you very much for the welcome, and I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here with Toronto Dominion. And let me just tell you something. I think in these last 3 years, if we have not recognized in this country what an incredible part of the great society that we live in comes from the banks, that solid financial base of our banks, then we've got our eyes closed. And I see, thousands of folks on TV across the country, across the world, really, and every time I see them, I say, you should be proud of what you do. You are a fundamental pillar of the base of this great country that we live in, the best country in the world, in my view, and I think you should be very proud of that. You should hold your head high. And I'm just going to ask the folks that are here wearing that TV pin on your shirt or your blouse or your jacket, would you just stand up and be recognized by the rest of the folks for helping be part of that great community in which we live, and the great province and the great country, because I think you deserve that recognition and thanks. Thank you for it. Now, having seen a number of folks who just stood up, I wonder who's minding our money this morning here. I wanted to become part of Toronto Dominion because I was impressed with the leadership in that bank. I'll simply tell you that. And, we've got a guy running the bank named Ed Clark, who is probably one of the most sought-after people in the world by our political leaders now, as they try to, find a way ahead through all the things that are going on, both for our country, for the continent, and for the world. And I was impressed by Ed Clark's leadership because he is a leader. I was also impressed by the leadership of the guy that Tom mentioned, Frank McKenna, who was a close personal friend. And so when they approached and asked if I considered become part of the bank, I was delighted to do so. And the first time, Frank and I have been friends for a long time. We worked very closely together when he was ambassador in the United States and I was the chief of defense staff. And of course, that relationship is key to us. And so one day we were having coffee in Frank's office down in Washington. And I'd had about 3 years in as CDS by then, and we were just chatting about, eventually that you leave no matter when it is, it's just a matter of when. And Frank said, Rick, he said, you'll be coming out of a very intense, a very stressful position. He said, you've not really done that before. He said, I've gone through a couple of transitions, and if you want, he said, I'll be delighted to offer you a couple, little tidbits that maybe would have helped you avoid some of the mistakes that I made. And he said, if you want it, of course. And I said, Frank, I'd love to have that. So, we kind of agreed that when it came time for me to go, he would offer that. I announced my retirement on the 15th of April, 2008. About 2 days later, the phone rang, and it was Frank. And we had a luncheon scheduled for a couple weeks down the road, and he said, Rick, I heard about the announcement of retirement and all that kind of stuff. He said, and I know we have a luncheon scheduled for a couple weeks. And he said, if you want to take me up on that offer, some advice on transitioning, I'd be delighted to do so. And I said, Frank, I'd love to have that. Good. He said, I'll make a list of points and we'll go through it over lunch. But in the meantime, he said, there are 2 things you really need to consider and have forefront in your mind right away. I said, what's that, Frank? Got my notepad ready to jot them down because my mind is not very good. Number 1, he said, make no decisions early. So I got that, no decisions early. He said, you're coming off a stressful time, let the dust settle, decompress a little bit, spend some more time with your family, and only then when you're refreshed, make a decision about what you want to do with the rest of your life. So make no decisions early. I said, I got that, Frank, make no decisions early. And what's number 2? Number 2, he said, Toronto Dominion would love to have you come work for us. A little bit of an anomaly there, and we agreed. And I've had this incredible time, and I will tell you that bank has got some of the finest people in this country working for it, and therefore I think you would be confident to deal with them in any way, shape, or form, and we guarantee you that you're going to get the best service in the country. And if you don't like that, you tell us about it, and if you tell us about it and it doesn't change, you go find another bank, because we know, we are confident we can deliver on that guarantee. So look, I'm delighted to be here this morning. If I fall off the stage, it's not because I'm not agile or something like this. Because I'm in a bit of a terrible jet lag. I left Dubai in the Persian Gulf yesterday morning, and it's a long haul coming here to Sarnia, Ontario. I simply got to tell you, and air travel these days is simply not fun and just a beat. So I actually appreciated the opportunity to get in here a little early yesterday afternoon. And I think I slept for 12 hours straight, so I'm good on recovery here now. I'm glad to be here. And I want to be able to chat this morning just about from my perspective, some pretty inspirational stories. And inspirational people, because that's where any story, I believe, comes from. And one thing I try to remember all the time in my life as a leader, and I would recommend to anybody who's a leader, whether you're in a formal appointment or not, is that if you are a leader or or if you want to be a leader and you remember that your focus has got to be on people, and the people who want to follow you or the people who want to work with you, if you can remember that, you're going to be okay. And if you ever forget that, and think it's about a whole bunch of other things, and whether it's technology or process or organization or any of those things, or it's about you, if you ever start thinking those kinds of things, I actually think that you're on your way to failure as a leader. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, not from the point of view of Rick Hillier, but from the point of view of Rick Hillier having had the privilege to work with some of the most incredible men and women in the world, and get an opportunity to see leadership in its very real and stark and sort of naked form. And I was so impressed by these people that it inspired me to carry on for the rest of my life. And so I'm going to talk about some of that. I'm a Newfoundlander. I do love to talk, okay? I just apologize for that up front. I always believe you don't ask permission, you just beg forgiveness at the end of it. So I know you've got a big schedule for the rest of the day. I'm going to talk to you for a while, okay? Because like I say, we Newfoundlanders love to talk. And many of us went to what I can only describe as the Joey Smallwood School of Public Speaking. And you know Joey Smallwood, our former premier, father of the Confederation. Joey used to say that if something is worth saying once, it's worth saying at least 5, 6, or 7 times. So we all do. And Joey would also say, look, if you get an audience captive, and you got them, flat on their back or their foot on their throat, don't let them up for God's sake. Right? Don't do that. So I take full advantage of that. I'm also married to a Newfoundlander, and Joyce loves to talk, and so she doesn't let me talk at home. So I get a group like you, and I take full advantage of it. Right? I'll tell you one story. This is true. 2 years ago, I was speaking at a luncheon in downtown Toronto at the Metro Convention Center. It was a big lunch, about 850 people, circular tables like this, but actually packed in much more closely because for some reason we ended up in a smaller room than we probably should have had. And so you were really packed in. Once you're in, it's hard to get out. And we were in a part of the Metro Convention Center where there was no carpet. It was just a cement floor that's been sealed. And so I got up and spoke at lunch, and I banged on for quite a bit. And about halfway through my talk, a guy kind of 3 tables back in the center got up to leave. It was pretty obvious. Everybody else sitting down, he's getting up and moving. But because he's moving out, because we're so closely packed, other people had to move their chairs. And you know what happens when you drag one of these chairs across the cement floor? You get that grating sound, and in this big room, it was like a cavernous, like a cave, and you get the echo coming back, and it actually was really distracting. So I stopped and said, sir, it's distracting, a little bit ignorant that you leave in the middle of my talk. Do you really have to go now? Because it is distracting as people had to move their chairs. So he stopped, and he stood up, and he looked back at me, and I think he had a little flush of embarrassment in his cheeks. He said, General Hillier, I do apologize, he said. I didn't want to leave, he said, but I had to go for a haircut. And I said, oh my God, man, couldn't you have gotten a haircut before we sat down? He said, sir, when I sat down, I didn't need a haircut. I just mentioned that one too, okay? Look, it's been I look around this audience and I see some very special people here, and so this morning I just want to, I'll make reference to them for sure. There's a group, I know we've got some first responders and some police officers here. Could you just stand up and be identified? Those are first responders and paramedics and firemen and women and police officers. Could you stand up and let us recognize? Your uniforms give you away. Soldiers on missions around the world. I know guys like Scott Elliott that will back me up on this. Because, we as soldiers can bring certain things, and we could knock an enemy down and give a chance to a country to rebuild, and we could do all of those things. We could even bring about an absence of hostilities in certain cases, but we could not secure a country. And what securing a country really meant was that they had functioning and professional and ethical first responders, firefighters and paramedics, and above all, police officers, because that was certainly what brought security to a country. And I talked to a lot of our folks about this as we were trying to do nation building. I'll tell you what, people measure all the things, you got these tick marks about whether you're making progress or not, whether you're training the police force or training the army. That's all bullshit, right? Let me just tell you, the critical measurement is, if you look at the police officers we got, just stop and think about it. If you're on Highway 402 at 3 o'clock in the morning, and a police car pulls you over, no matter which police force it is, and you're sitting there in your car, just think about this for a second now. You have complete confidence that that police officer, that man or woman, is going to get out of their car and going to come up and going to be an absolute consummate professional with you. You're not worried about, being brutally injured. You're not worried about somebody trying to extort money from you. You're not worried about a whole bunch of things. You have absolute confidence that that police officer, man or woman, is going to do the job that you asked them to do, and it's one of those incredible things. And I said to our folks, when we can see people at 3 o'clock in the morning in Afghanistan or Bosnia or Croatia or Kosovo, wherever you go, being stopped at a police checkpoint, and you cannot see a look of fear in their eyes, that is when we have made the transition to a country that is stable and going to be able to carry on its own. I just want to commend those police officers and first responders there this morning because the work you do, because you make our country so awesome and so great. Always a great opportunity, always a great thing to suck up the police officers. But you never know. You never know when you're going to need that at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'll tell you my favorite police officer story. Since my wife is not here, she always gets embarrassed when I tell her. I was in Bosnia back in 94, 95, 96, and I was there at this one time for 5.5